joining us right now is Joe Saunders, and Joe is the managing partner at Figure 8 Capital. So Figure 8 Capital, business professional and investor, builder of multi-family real estate, professional financial advisor. I could go on and on of what they do, but what's so fascinating is think Alaska, think business incubator, raising money, and how do you do that? Joe, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. And sorry to for one sideways at you. It's actually Figure 9 Capital.
Oh, Figure 9.
Throws a few people off. So yeah.
Well, Figure 8. I think I was thinking of the figure skating from the Olympics that I was forced to watch last night. I guess was on my mind.
I was thinking of the sumo wrestler.
So Figure 9, tell us about how you create that. How you've created that business. I'll call it incubator, for lack of a better way to say it, but it is, and getting dollars to projects in Alaska.
Yeah, well, we're actually focused on development of multifamily properties in Anchorage, Alaska specifically, but around some of the larger metro areas. And one of the interesting things going on up here is that the multifamily unit, the average age of a rental unit is 30 years. So a lot of the inventory here was actually built during the pipeline when there was a big boom up here for that purpose. And then since then, there largely has not been any new development of multifamily properties aside from a couple of select projects here and there. So it's been a challenge for builders to find ways to do that cost effectively in light of the fact that holding costs for existing inventory and acquiring existing inventory is cheaper than building most of the time. So, but we've actually found some new ways to construct using modular, some modular advantages and things of that sort that make it more cost effective for us to build, and that's what we're focused on.
So what are some of the tax advantages, because that's what people are thinking of, particularly in the last couple of months, of real estate investing?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things with any kind of a real estate investment versus securities, formal securities, is you have the non-cash benefits with depreciation and such because you have direct ownership of an asset. The way we have our investment structured right now through private placement, and it's all under an LLC, any of the investors actually have a percentage ownership in the tangible assets of the fund and of the projects that we're building here. So that gives them some non-cash expenses. You still get your cash return, and then with that, a lower tax bill as a result because you get a discount on the actual taxable income that is reflected on your portion.
Yeah.
So I guess in this case, when you're looking at an LLC, they're actually benefiting from the pass-through from the cost of operating the business itself as quote-unquote members of the LLC itself?
You got it.
Okay, so when you send their K-1 out each year, obviously you're giving them the taxable amount of income for that, right?
Exactly.
How do you? I know I talk fast. And I'm an old trader, so you have to forgive me for that. But when you think about development in Alaska, because I've had clients that they were at Prudhoe Bay and a couple other places. How do you overcome some of the construction issues associated with one, coding, two? Now this is kind of off the wall question, but also getting projects done in time in lieu of some issues you might have from a weather standpoint. That would be the one thing that I would look at from Alaska development that might be somewhat problematic.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an ongoing challenge for Alaska, more so than some other locations. But one of the main things actually is just planning for it. There's a lot of realities, and especially supplies, equipment, materials getting shipped up from out of state because the bulk of it is going to come up that way. You just have to plan for some margin in your development plan and construction plan. But then beyond that, as far as protection on other issues that could affect and cause delays, again, kind of back to the modular concept that we're doing, that's actually another advantage that we have with that as well. Instead of having to begin a project where you break ground and then do all the on-site construction over the course of 12 to 18 months, depending on the size and scope of a project, or sometimes it's shorter, the way our modular model works is we have the project or the property selected that we want to redevelop in most cases up here. And during the time that we're getting all the plans and permits approved and securing permits that we need to actually begin construction, we're generating cash flow based on the existing structure that's there, so our carry cost is minimized. And then when it comes time to actually construct, again, using modular, we don't have to break ground until we have everything on site ready to go. And then when we're ready to break ground, we break ground, remove the old structures, and then drop in our new modular building. And then we're looking at a 3-month horizon at most for breaking ground to getting a certificate of occupancy. So it's another way to hedge against that risk specifically, whether it's shipping delays and other weather delays, but also the just general development risk of beginning a project and then having, 6 months into a 12-month process, the market conditions change on you, and then you're SOL, right?
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
SOL for sure. Absolutely. Joe, we have 1 minute left. What do you want people to take away from this interview? Because, you're broadcasting in Dallas and people are thinking of Alaska. And what you just explained was fascinating because I think people in their minds are thinking, well, exactly what Ed just said, that the whole thing of breaking ground and the weather, and you explained that. I could imagine that you have a lot of investors, once you explain that, from around the country, from around the states anyway.
Yeah, well, right now, the big ask is we're looking for strategic partners and investors to partner with us to keep scaling up what we're doing and to continue growing our operations. So, if anybody's interested, we'd love to talk some more. We've got a few different ways to reach us, but the one for the project, the modular construction project in particular, that would be the best place to start would be AlaskaREI.com. And that explains a couple of the bullet points and then gives us the contact info. Otherwise, Figure 9 Capital you can find us on Google.
Figure 9. Thanks, Joe. Coming up next, markets to watch here on CEO Money. We're back here on CEO Money. You just heard the weather report. Very bleak. Today is a pretty nice day, but we kind of feel like we're in Alaska, or we will feel like a little bit like we're in Alaska over the weekend on Saturday. Unfortunately for me, I have a friend who's got a golf tournament going on in Lantana, and I have girlfriends flying in from all over the country who might as well turn around because they're not hitting any golf balls. And there's no golf ball hitting going on unless we go to Top Golf. That's all I can say about that.
That's my suggestion. Those are my favorite 2 words, Top Golf.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where we're headed. So one of them better have a fat wallet. Maybe they invested in some of what we're talking about because they're going to have to pick up the tab. Joe Saunders joins us again. So happy to still have him with us in Alaska. Figure 9 Capital. We're talking about all things Alaska when it comes to real estate. It's been really a fascinating discussion. And Joe, thanks for hanging through with us. We really appreciate that. And we're going to go to Markets to Watch coming up in our last segment today with David Williams, of course. So, Joe, when we look at what we've been talking about in the weather, breaking ground, the multifamily real estate deals, that kind of thing, where would you say the bulk of your interest comes from right now? I was trying to get to that earlier.
The bulk of our interest as far as the market interest?
Yeah, market interest.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, the average age of a rental unit in town is 30 years. So anything new, traditional builders are constructing as a spec home. And, honestly, that's one of the reasons the old inventory is still viable is the bedrooms are larger. The overall living space is just much more enjoyable, I guess is a better way to say it. The newer projects that traditional builders are building are very limited amenities and just generally kind of cramped feeling. So one of the things that our construction methods, the modular concept gives us is the ability to actually get some very unique spaces in how we're finishing things out inside, and then also just by forcing things to be a little more pre-planned and pre-constructed that way, we've got a lot more flexibility on creating layouts that are more unique, and then looking at ways to merge the indoors and outdoors a little more so than you would with traditional stick frame construction, using some interesting ideas with garage doors, other large open areas and common areas on the properties, rooftop decks and things of that sort, which, they're common other places, but you don't see that kind of stuff up here just as much. In summertime, it's awesome just as much as it is anywhere else in Alaska, especially when you're cooped up for 8-9 months out of the year. It's nice to enjoy the sun when it is sunny. So a lot of other unique amenities and features on the properties is really what's grabbing people's attention.
Joe, I'll approach it from the investment side. I come from the investment side. How do you compete on a return basis against the lower 48 when you look at some of the special concerns that you have in construction there, and also what would be an example of some of the cap rates you see for the types of properties you have in Alaska?
Sure. Well, Anchorage actually has some of the lowest vacancies in the country. It's been vacancy rates increased a little bit over the last little while, but still vacancies are much lower than other markets. So overall, from a cash on cash return, and especially being in the position as a developer, we're able to sell properties for a premium still. And then again, utilizing these modular concepts also helps us do it a little more cost effectively too, by utilizing labor that's more cost effective for us, not in Alaska, and to do the bulk of the work and then save some money that way. And then as far as cap rates and returns, I mean, it's not uncommon to look at a large multifamily property up here, with cap rate in 10, 12% range. Our particular project, it's not cap rate, IRR. We're focused on about a 16% IRR for the life of this fund for these projects in particular.
Would you say the majority that's generated from the actual exit, or because obviously it doesn't look like you're holding that long, but what would be the dividend people could expect from being a part or a equivalent dividend equivalent as an LLC shareholder, or I guess member? What would be a dividend equivalent they could expect from an investment in your particular projects?
Yeah, our particular project, we're offering 7.5% preferred dividend, so that's an annual dividend, and then 70% participation in the equity, or the actual liquidation portion of everything once we liquidate the fund. So, and that'll equate to a 16% IRR at least.
What do you see as the average duration of the funds?
This particular one, we expect to do 10 of these projects, and over the course of 5 years.
Okay,
wow.
Fabulous.
So you look at the economic opportunities, and obviously you've opened that up, and just based on what Ed asked you and then giving us the amount 7.5% and then the 70%, those are pretty decent numbers. I would think that's part, obviously, of the attraction and the selling point of this. Since you launched this and as you're getting more eyeballs on it, do you feel like you're picking up more momentum right now, or you're still really working on that momentum?
We're generally picking up quite a bit of momentum right now. We've been working at this for a while and trying to do a few other angles. But the interesting thing is the more people that we've been able to get in front of and actually spread the word about this idea, there's quite a bit of interest in momentum building for sure.
And how about, I would think, politically speaking, not to dive into that, but I would assume, knowing some of the people who represent that I've spoken to in the past, Alaska, I would assume that they are interested in watching this growth.
Absolutely. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity in Alaska, and honestly, the last several years with the oil prices and Alaska being so driven by that economically, there's been a lot of concern and fears up here for just what the overall economic condition looks like. But we've got a solid base with tourism that's only increasing. We've got a lot of healthcare economic activity and benefit up here that's funded by the federal government and other Indian Affairs and other government programs, and then the military investment. So those don't make up anything that would completely replace the resource development industry, but they do make a big difference in some of the urban areas that we're targeting in particular. So there's a lot of opportunity, and it would definitely be something that anybody up here who wants to see Alaska succeed would get behind. So,
Joe, looking at, I guess, the demographics and the growth that you see as far as Alaska is concerned, are you seeing a pretty significant or a reasonable amount of migration from the lower 48 to Alaska that represents the demand for your product?
Yeah, that's actually the population up here is very rare to see somebody that's born and raised. It's becoming a little more common these days, but the bulk of our population is either originally transferred up here or stationed up here temporarily for the military, and then comes back after, or ends up staying here for the long term. Or the same thing with resource development in that industry. So there's a lot of people that travel up here just for work and then end up staying longer. To answer your question, though, yes, that there's a lot of people that come from out of state with certain standards and expectations as to what the rental units and market would look like and what kind of conditions properties are in. And honestly, a lot of the stuff that's the existing inventory that's 30 plus years old it's been extremely disappointing, and that's been a common response we've seen from people in the rental market.
Yeah, for you, you've spent a lot of time in Anchorage in Alaska. Are you born and raised in that area?
I am. Yep. I am, and the other gentleman that I'm working on this project with was also.
And I would assume, in a way, that makes a difference, because you know how that is. Sometimes somebody sees some opportunity, not that that's necessarily bad, but they go to a particular area of the country. I've seen this in real estate before, but they're not steeped in the culture and the traditions, and you've got that, obviously.
Yeah, and Alaska, for as big as it is, too, in addition to that, there's roughly 2 acres per resident from last calcs I heard, as far as space goes. So even though it's a massive space, it's a very small community still. So having that local presence and history and then those local connections does make a tremendously huge difference.
Yeah. Joe, last question. It's kind of my curveball question. What keeps you up at night?
That's a good question. I've lived in Alaska. I love Alaska. Alaska's always home. I'd love to help build Alaska, and that's one of the things that I'm always working for and finding other angles, whether it's a business or development projects like this. So that was probably the best, quickest answer I could come up with for you there.
I like that. Build Alaska. It sounds like a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Joe Saunders, managing partner, Figure 9 Capital. Tell us your website again.
AlaskaREI.com.
Okay, AlaskaREI.com. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Coming up next, Markets to Watch with David Williams. Kate Delaney in for Michael Yorba here on CEO Money.